Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Satya Mishra. I'm CTO at Connexio. Um, so we're ready to start our. Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Satya Mishra. I'm CTO at Connexio. Um, we're ready to start our expert series discussion with Bhaskar Dutta. And Bhaskar is a data scientist at Bayer Crop Science in St. Louis, Missouri. He is working primarily in computer vision, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and deep learning. He also has extensive background in data engineering and processing technologies. His primary interests are in product innovation, leveraging the recently possible in technology. Bhaskar, welcome to our expert series, and thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to do this.
Absolutely.
So we collected some questions from students in India on AI who are interested in studying AI and machine learning. So we can start with the first set of questions, and students feel free to ask more questions in the chat, and we'll get to those towards the end of the session. So let's see. The first question here is we got this question from a lot of students. So where do I start if I'm interested in AI and machine learning? Where can I get a free complete course if I'm doing this? And is there um, some way I can self-study? Um, how what's the best strategy to learn, and how to start?
Yeah. So one thing about AI and ML today in the last few years is that there is really no dearth of resources online
Mhm.
for people to get started.
Right.
So there are some courses which are completely free.
Yeah.
Like for instance, there is this course called Fast AI.
Yep.
Fast AI is almost completely free and it's very quality material in it. And it's actually uh, taught by one of the uh, one of the top Kaggle data scientists
Mhm.
ever, Jeremy Howard. And so they take a very agnostic view of data science or ML, especially with deep learning, in terms of that if you are a software programmer, you really don't have a lot of mathematical background, you can get started with it.
Okay.
So I would strongly recommend that. Beyond Fast AI, you have all these Coursera courses.
Yeah.
Like for instance, Andrew Nick has a series on ML, machine learning,
Right.
which was very popular, and I think that is free. Even your Jeffrey Hinton had a course on AI,
Okay.
on neural network.
Okay.
So I
And
mean,
that's on Coursera as well?
that's on Coursera as well.
Okay.
And I mean, I took both of them way back, like 3, 4 years back, and there is a new course from Andrew Nick, which is paid, which is $50 per month. But I mean, if you but then all the material on it
Yeah.
would be freely available in YouTube if somebody wants to just get started with it.
Hmm.
So today, I think courseware, in terms of there is no dearth of them. Actually, it is harder to select which one to start with.
Right.
So
Uh, so is there one that you would specifically recommend out of all these
yeah,
options?
I would say Andrew Nick is great because just the way he teaches,
Yeah.
he's a great teacher. So that would be nice. And maybe start with Andrew Nick ML course,
Okay.
which is non-deep learning, which is like statistical learning and all that.
Yeah.
So start with that, and then go to the Andrew Nick's deep learning
Okay.
course, and then maybe by the time if you I mean, by the time you should be pretty good.
Yeah.
But I would say go ahead with Fast AI too, because with Fast AI, one thing that I've noticed is that he keeps a very good. He teaches a lot of tricks,
Mm-hmm.
which you would use in while you're working,
Right.
right? So like I wouldn't call it hacks, but some kind of slightly offbeaten way of doing things,
Right.
which actually gives a nice.
Yeah.
Uh,
The data is rarely in the form that you actually need, and he
yes,
teaches quite a bit of that, I think.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, it does.
Yeah. So Andrew Ng is on Coursera. He was one of the co-founders of Coursera, I
Yes,
think. Yeah. So Yeah, he's a big name in the field. Uh, as Bhaskar suggested, check out Andrew Ng's course on Coursera and Fast.ai. That's Jeremy Howard.
Right.
And then and I think Andrew Ng's new thing is called deeplearning.ai, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And also, I think most of these, like MIT has an open courseware.
Yeah.
Right. And then Coursera has a whole bunch of, like John Hopkins, I think, had one on statistical learning. So there is a whole bunch of these courses that are the fast AI and the deep learning.ai, they are the most popular ones.
Yeah.
But then if you want like specific, like information theory,
Right.
so there must be some courses from these universities on information theory or specific computer vision stuff.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. Well, thanks for the great tips there. So the next question, and I didn't note down who gave this question, is there's a lot of math involved in all this deep learning, AI, machine learning. Do you need to know all the math that goes on inside there to get good at machine learning?
you specifically don't need to get started, in my
Okay.
opinion,
Okay.
but then eventually you will.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
so once you get started with, to train a neural network or to start doing basic logistic regression and things like that,
Right.
you probably don't need to know the math that much.
Okay.
You should be able to get results upfront.
Okay.
But then to interpret things, and when things go into a tight corner, to
Right.
actually come out of all these things, it's. I mean, for me to say that you will not need maths would be highly responsible.
Okay.
So you should. I mean, you will need maths eventually,
Eventually.
but to get
Yeah.
started, I don't think that's very important.
Okay.
But especially like linear algebra
Yeah.
and probability theory
Yeah.
and like basic Bayesian and basic information theory, and that's quite important.
Okay. So to summarize, you definitely don't need a whole lot of math to get started, but maybe just grounding in some linear algebra.
Yes, I mean
And
one
then
shouldn't be completely off track, like oh, like you don't know what a matrix is or a transpose of a matrix is.
Right.
I mean, so
Yeah, then that would be a problem. But once you know a little bit, you can get started
yes.
and you can pick up the math as you go.
I mean basic engineering maths, like your second year, third year,
Yeah.
will be more than enough.
Okay. The next question is there a particular language you should know, like programming language, to?
Yeah, I mean, Python has become the de facto language now,
Right.
right? And it's fast approaching to be the most popular language. So I think there is a no-brainer there, Python.
Okay.
And Python has an easy learning curve too.
Okay.
Somebody who doesn't know Python to start coding in Python is probably not that hard, right? So,
Right. I think I've definitely noticed that most of these courses are heavy on Python, at least Fast.ai
yeah,
is,
almost
is
everybody
entirely
is.
all in Python. So if you're, yeah,
Almost everybody is in all like TensorFlow, for instance. Even though the back end of all these algorithms or all these frameworks
Right.
is probably C, C++,
yeah,
but they have like your interfacing is always Python.
yeah, and that at least during learning, I think you're probably going to be working on Python rather than C++.
Yeah.
Maybe for production, you might go there.
Yeah, and with Python, you have a very robust data pipeline,
Right.
right? So you have pandas there that are NumPy, for instance. I mean, I would strongly uh, like what is was interesting in Twitter. I saw one time that somebody was saying that whenever I start coding
Right.
in data science, the number one statement is import NumPy. So I
True.
mean, you probably that's one of the
Yeah.
most important packages that you would be using. Then
Yeah.
SciPy is another one
Yeah.
that I would think people should be very familiar with.
Right. So the next question is, do you have prerequisites that you need to? So I think we talked about it a little bit. You have to have some understanding of linear algebra.
Yes, I mean you should understand linear algebra because I mean take like what is a dot product, for
Yeah.
instance, and things like that.
Yeah.
I mean if I mean those are the lingua franca of
Yeah.
most of data science.
Right.
So and then Also, you need some statistics, like what is the covariance or what is correlation,
Right.
right? What is null hypothesis and
Right.
things like
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
So, I mean, those are again very
Yeah.
initial statistical
Mm-hmm.
concepts. So, getting to know them
Yeah.
that's paramount, and I don't think that's really hard to do
Okay.
because again, if you go through Andrew Nick's ML course,
Yeah.
he does that very very well.
Okay.
So I mean that's almost I mean do that, and then you should be at par with the getting into very advanced ML.
Okay.
So
And for all the students watching there, we will put all these answers in a note, and we'll make it available to you. So take notes if you need to, but we'll also make this information available to you later on. Um, Next question is, how can we build up confidence? I think this is not just AI ML, but I think we can give it a little bit of a flavor of
yeah, I
how to
would
build it. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, Kaggle Kaggle competition. So
Okay.
that's the short answer. So let me actually dial back and say that from my experience, right?
Yeah.
So I was not into AI. I mean, when I started working, there was nothing called AI as a
Right.
coin, right?
Right.
Or even ML.
Right.
So, and I was a software engineer to
Right.
start with.
Right.
So we started. I started doing some of these analytics, if you may say,
Okay.
because some of my work really needed that. Okay, can we predict something, or can we find some anomalies in our data and things
Right.
like that? And that's how I got started,
Okay.
and around 2013-14 timeframe.
Okay.
And I had the same question:
Right.
is that what really is AI, and how do I actually know that what I'm doing is right? And
Right.
so
Yeah.
thankfully there was Kaggle.
Okay.
So I would strongly suggest that even if you don't compete in Kaggle competitions, at
Right.
least go through the old ones
Yeah.
that is out there.
Yeah.
So take those problems that like 12, 2013 or 14 Kaggle competitions that is out there.
Right.
Try to solve it. If you can solve it, great. If you can't solve it, at least, and then you have the answers out there too.
Okay.
Many of those answers are public, and they are from the best data scientists in the world.
Yep.
So, I mean, there's invaluable resource out there for somebody to start, and also there is data.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and those are real world data.
Yeah. So just to give a background, Kaggle, KAGGLE.com is a website. I think it's also founded by Jeremy Howard, who also runs Fast AI, I think. So Kaggle.com has hosts contests and practice problems. You can go there. Uh, you know,
And there is a very robust community out there where
yeah,
people post questions and others answer. So that's a great place to be.
yeah. As with anything, the way to build confidence is work on problems, solve them, and with AI and ML, there's this great resource, Kaggle.com. All right, great. I think we've exhausted our questions in the how to study. We were talking a little bit about what do you do after you study, and jobs and careers and all these things. So can you describe some specific career paths within the area of AI and talk a little bit about what we should do to get there?
Yeah. So so somebody had quoted some time back that data science is the number one job right
Mm-hmm.
today in the world.
Oh, yeah.
So almost every company is hiring data scientists. So now so if somebody knows data science, statistics, and machine learning and AI and all that, probably getting a job is not that hard at all.
Okay.
Right? I mean, the number of job openings for AI and ML is, I mean, it is not going to slow down.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
So that's a specific data science jobs. Now there is this other part of it. Now take an analogy between software engineering world. Now if I dial back in 1980s,
Mm-hmm.
a whole bunch of jobs in software engineering was around programming, and things like that, right? Now,
Right.
come back 20 years down the line, you
Right.
have an industry
Right.
where develop. So when there is a software product being created, you have coders or developers who write code,
Right.
but there is a whole bunch of other functions as well. You have business analysts, you have product managers, you have UX folks,
Right.
right? So you have all these kind of different job streams
Hmm.
that come out from
Okay.
just plain coding, right?
Right.
So something similar is going to happen with AI and data science too.
Hmm.
Like you have data scientists who are working and actually doing the modeling and all that.
Okay.
Now, clearly there is a new, like for instance, with deep learning and the CNNs and all that, they need a lot of data.
Right.
So some teams in like the big Silicon Valley corporations, they're coming up with this notion called label engineering.
Okay.
So label engineering are actually software engineers or
Mm-hmm.
data engineers
Okay.
whose primary focus is to build data sets for the models to operate on,
Okay.
right?
Hmm.
So now that's a brand new job role which
Okay.
wouldn't have existed 10
Yeah.
years back. So who knows what other job roles will come up?
Right.
So so this is an emerging industry, if you may say,
Right.
where job roles will new job roles will come up,
Right.
not just coding and not just modeling,
Mm-hmm.
but also in other areas too.
Right.
So
Yeah, that's a great point. I just never thought about that. Yeah, there's all these ancillary things that will come up because things need to be more specialized.
right.
Okay, good point. Do the ML positions in different companies require sound knowledge of traditional software engineering, data structures, algorithms, or can you just be more of a math guy, I guess?
So my background has been I was primarily a software engineering
Okay.
person, so I would have a strong bias towards software engineering,
Okay.
and I would say that is not unfounded. That
Okay.
having a software engineering knowledge
Mm-hmm.
is quite important.
Okay.
So so there is a new thinking that is evolving around. So may I heard of this person called Andres Karpati.
Okay.
He is the director of AI in Tesla.
Right.
So he had a blog posting called Software 2.0,
Right.
right? That how is software engineering changing
Mm-hmm.
from in the age of deep learning and these kind of AI softwares, where you're learning instead of actually writing if then else and case statements.
Right.
Your the rules are being derived from data directly.
Right.
And that's ML.
Hmm.
So now you have a new paradigm of how software is going to be written,
Okay.
right?
Hmm.
So instead of where the programmer would take a requirement and then write rules for it,
Right.
now the rules have been derived from the data directly.
Hmm.
Now, given that scenario, what happens to older software engineering, right?
Yeah.
That still stays
That still
because
stays,
software
yeah.
engineering. So if you call this a software 2.0,
Yeah.
software 2.0 is written by tools using of software 2.1 of
Yeah.
software 1.0, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you need to know those.
Yeah.
I mean, proper sound software engineering knowledge is probably going to be more helpful in data science
Right.
than anything else.
Okay. Great. The next question is data science a good option to proceed in India?
Absolutely. I think
Uh,
it will be across the world.
yeah. And the next question was globally. So yes, it is a growing field everywhere, and it should be a good career option for the next quite a few years.
Yes.
Um, this is kind of related to the next question, masters in a CS field versus job experience. So this is like, should you do a master's or should you get some experience and then do a master's or never do a master's?
I would, I mean, so this is an academic discipline still,
Yeah.
right? There is still a lot of things which like academic papers
Hmm.
say something and industry experience something else.
Right.
So things like that, a bridge between academics and engineering is actually quite beneficial.
Hmm.
So I would say that having a master's is probably more useful at this point
Okay.
than how it was with software engineering.
Right. Okay.
Software engineering was a way more baked in uh, baked in industry than data science is right
Okay.
now. So,
So you definitely recommend getting a master's if you
I
have.
was graduating right now, I would actually do a master's in CS or ML.
Right.
So,
The next question is kind of interesting. So what advice would you give someone who is about to enter third year of college? So first of all, you're doing very good if you're thinking 2 years ahead already.
yes.
Regarding a career in machine learning and AI. So,
Yes, I had written an answer to that.
oh, you had answered. Okay, perfect. I just there somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
So learn fundamentals of linear algebra and probability theory really well.
Yeah.
If you are at third year of college, and develop, you know,
Since it's abstract problems.
yeah. So yeah, develop um, develop the so how do you learn a new concepts? So that's one thing that will keep on happening in AI, especially, and if you want to be in AI, is that uh, things will keep evolving. Like if you notice, like these top like Neuro IPS is the conference for neural processing, information processing conference, has 6,000 papers every year.
Wow.
So the level of changes that is happening is dramatic. So develop the habit, and that's not going to stop really.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably the notion of how things will evolve going forward.
Right.
And for people who are in college right now, I think one of the biggest skills that you need to, or rather you have to think about, is that learning is not going to stop, right? Gone are the days when, let's say, when my parents graduated from college, I mean, they did their 4 years or 2 years and plus 2 years or something, and then, studies is gone, you go to work and come back home, that's gone.
Yeah.
So I mean, even with me, I have to keep redefining myself. So that's probably going to be the basic way, fundamental way job and things will operate in future. So
Okay.
that's a skill.
Right.
Really. Develop creative problem solving skills.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's a no-brainer for almost everything. You
Right.
need that. It doesn't necessarily have to be AI.
Right.
Or so
Yeah.
there's that, and yeah, that's what I would say. I
Okay.
mean, have learn maths
Yeah.
if you are in college in the third year.
Yeah.
I mean, and learn it well that you don't forget after college, because that was something we did, and then we had to
Yeah.
learn it back, and that's harder.
That is
So
definitely harder. Yeah. And I think some of the previous answers still apply. So you should definitely think about doing a master's. So you can probably start preparing for that. And third year is the right time to start thinking about that.
and also there are other things, like I said about this, right? That what career paths there.
Yeah.
Like going forward, there could be ancillary career paths in AI. For instance, AI safety,
Right.
like law, for instance.
Right.
How does law changes when you have AI in the picture?
Right.
So computer science and doing development and doing modeling is probably not the only job that will be in existence. You might be a person who has a law degree working in AI.
Yeah.
Right. So, like one of the biggest things that Google was hiring was people who had humanities degrees
Huh.
working in these kind of technology, core
Right.
technology jobs.
Right.
So, so that's something that can happen too.
Okay. Great answer there. And this one is a little bit interesting as well. So, what should someone from a life sciences background focus on in order to land a good ML job? And I think this might apply to those ancillary things that you were talking about. Um, would companies applying machine learning to life sciences hire a candidate knowing biology, statistics, and basic ML, but not very good in traditional software engineering?
Yeah, so right now I'm sitting in Bayer Crop Science.
Yeah.
We are a life science company, and I'm right now sitting in the research labs. So this conference room, if you go further down, there's a chemistry lab there.
Right.
So what is interesting, if you go to these chemistry labs today, is that people are writing ML and statistical code there.
Okay.
So the it is kind of getting blurred
hmm
that if you are a geneticist or
Yeah.
a biologist or a plant pathologist, uh, you would actually do a bunch of ML tasks today.
Right.
You would be doing linear regression of your data,
Mm.
and tomorrow, as more CNNs come in, you would have these kind of AI softwares that you would be, if not developing directly, you
hmm
would be working very closely with those algorithms. So I think the the boundaries between very like how traditionally you would say that, okay, I'm a plant pathologist, or I'm a mm, epidemiologist or something like that, or versus I don't know anything about that,
hmm
and I'm just core software engineer.
hmm
Those lines are getting blurred.
Okay.
Like for me, for instance, I had to learn basic. I'm from the other side. I'm from a software engineering AI
Right.
background, so I had to know what does ACTE stand for in the genetic code, right?
Right.
So, and how does base pairs work and things like that, and what is the central dogma of genetics, and all those kind of things. So it's going to be from both sides.
Okay.
So I think they are kind of joined in hip. So
So the answer is you gotta know both.
got to know both.
But you might be good at, or you might be an expert
Yes,
in one side, but not.
and I would say that if you are good
Yeah.
at biology
Yeah.
and good at ML,
Yeah.
you will be picked up by companies. That's a very desirable place to be in.
Right.
So
But even if you know a little bit of software engineering, I think that's still a
yes, software
good point to be.
engineering has. I mean, I would say that basic software engineering skills going forward will be like Excel.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody knows Excel, so that's an expectation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. And I think so. Next set of questions is about like
Yes,
what is the impact of AI on society and future and all that thing. So I think we answered a bit of that already. So what is the scope of AI in the future? This is like
so
such a broad question.
yeah, so see, I mean, there are a lot of people. If you go in Twitter and in Reddit, ML,
Yeah.
there are a lot of people with high opinions, and people are trying to predict what will happen in the world. Elon Musk says that the
Yeah.
world will get destroyed by robots and things like that.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't have an opinion. I mean, nobody really knows the
Nobody
future.
really knows.
But at present, though, if you stand right now, like here,
Mhm.
their crop science, almost every project has an we seem to have like the concept that we need to think if machine learning will be used in this.
Yeah.
Almost each and every project.
Mm.
So, so AI will be in almost everything that you will work on. And
Okay.
if you are going to graduate in the next couple of years and then start working,
Mhm.
I mean, this is not going to stop.
Right.
This will keep on happening. That you will have AI, and so the scope is that there will be AI in almost everything.
Right.
So that's what I would think.
Yep. Um, Next question is, there are two things in the world, one negative and another one is positive. How does AI will how will AI do good for human beings instead of doing bad?
Yeah, I mean, with every tool, there is this thing, right?
Yeah.
That I mean, as they say that if you have a gun, you can probably kill people, and probably, I mean, this probably does more harm than good. But with every tool, you have this. You can do positive things, you can do negative things. Like
Right.
for instance, and there is emerging, like there are societies and there are actually organizations being formed which is going to come up with like, if not rules, or at least recommendations for the governments to
Right.
come up with, like what are the AI ethics and what is
Mhm.
AI safety.
Right.
Like for instance, there has been a universal moratorium on AI, like robotic weapons,
Yes.
like for instance. So almost every big research company has said we are not going to work if the armies or the defense organizations ask us to work on robotic weapons. So things like that will happen, and I think going forward there will be more regulations coming in.
Okay.
Like if you guys know much about GDPR, which was
Which is the European Union
yes,
privacy regulation.
privacy regulation.
Yeah.
So they came up with a set of rules,
Okay.
right? So things like that, which is far more stringent, that is there in US
Hmm.
and rest of the country or rest of the world. So I think things like that will get adopted more.
Okay.
So so yes, like with any technology, you can actually like with programming you have today this big thing about with viruses and
Hmm.
things like that. So that's the negative part of programming. But then you have so much good that
Yeah.
happens due to software and computers.
Right.
So something similar is going to happen with AI too.
Yeah.
There will be set of people who will do bad things with it, and then there will be a large group of people who are doing great things with it.
Yes. And also it is out there. So it is out there. It's not going back in the bottle. So
Yeah, it's not going to
we
back
have
up.
to work on making sure that it works for the
Yes.
good and not for the bad.
Right.
Um, so next question is, um, so this is kind of alluding to the first question. What are the general misconceptions and hyped up myths about AI capability that we should know? Like, what is realistically possible and what is just hype that's never going to happen?
Yeah, there is a saying that, like I think it was Bill Gates who said that
Mm.
that we kind of overestimate the near future,
Yeah.
but underestimate the long-term future.
Right.
So we always do that. So near future, everybody has, like for instance, people had said by this time self-driving cars will be all over the place.
Right.
Right? That didn't happen.
That will happen.
But then maybe 10, 15 years down the line, it will happen.
Yeah.
Right. So, so in terms of general misconceptions, is this that somehow AI is magical and that you have an algorithm and you have data and join it and then you have magic. That's not true. There is a lot of hard work that goes in.
Mhm.
Like you need to have your data in a particular way, your models, for instance, if you're working in deep learning and all that, there is a lot of pain that will be there while your model will not converge and things like that. So, so the general misconception that um, things are very magical is probably not true. That's one.
Mhm.
Some hypes in terms of like AI will solve everything in the world. That's probably not gonna happen,
Yeah.
right? And one of the biggest things that these things will one day become sentient,
Hmm.
right? And then
Yeah.
so that's not
That's
probably gonna happen.
right.
Or maybe even if it happens, it will be like 100 years down the line. Who knows?
Yeah.
So so those are the things. And then in terms of AI capabilities, yeah, I mean that's probably the biggest myth that is originating that AI is like almost like a thing
Yeah.
that will rise up, and
Yeah.
so
That's true.
that's not true at all. I mean, and people who are actually working in these models, you would see that there is no automatic notion about things.
Right.
So
Yeah. I can throw in a little bit of a factoid there. I think so. And the human brain burns about 100 watts and does so many things. The best AI is got the processing power of a bird or something like that right now, and it uses up kilowatts.
yeah, it uses a lot of energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there was this some paper which came out like a few weeks back.
Yeah.
So there in Google there is something called AutoML. So
Right.
what they're selling is this service where you bring your data in, and then they have a reinforcement learning or neural network which actually tries to generate another neural network.
Right.
And the way it does that, it actually creates one and then trains it, and
Yeah.
then sees and and then tests and then changes some parameters and does that again.
Yeah.
So if you can imagine, that takes a lot of processing power, right?
Right.
So to train one automatic OML program with neural architecture search
Yeah.
has the CO2 emission of 3 cars,
Okay.
lifetime of 3 cars,
Wow.
which is dramatic if you think
Yeah.
about it,
Yeah.
right? So one algorithm to train it,
Yeah.
it's equivalent to the CO2. It's as bad to the
Right.
Earth as 3 cars.
3 cars.
So that has to
Wow.
change.
Yeah. Uh, that's yeah. That's a good point. So what? And then the last question in this AI and society section is, what are your thoughts on the privacy with respect to AI? For example, there's widespread use of facial recognition, crime prediction, racial bias, and is there a career prospect for privacy experts in
It's
the
a good
field?
question. As I
Yeah,
said, this is going to be an industry.
yeah,
So privacy experts could very well be a field going forward. I would expect governments to come up and start saying that, there are only certain things that you can collect from users, and there are only certain things that you can do. That privacy is important, and things like that. So when something like that happens, I totally emphasize this thing that if you are writing, say, if you're working, say, in the medical field in the hospital,
right,
right? So in US, there is a strong medical records Privacy Act with the HIPAA, right?
right,
So, so something similar will happen in AI too. I'm pretty sure that you might have teams or job roles which are actually expressly whose primary responsibility is to make sure that you don't break rules in terms of privacy and things like
hmm,
that. So yes,
right,
yes, privacy is a very important aspect, and yeah, I mean, it's a very big question, really.
yeah,
These are things that are happening in the world and
yeah,
with very dramatic consequences.
yeah.
So
Great. And then we'll move on to the technical section. So technical section, actually, I just realized that we should probably have talked a little bit about what is AI, what is machine learning, what is deep learning.
yes,
Are these things the same? They're related?
yeah. So the way, at least there is a lot of leeway in terms of how the definitions are being done today.
Right,
But at least in the way I think about it, so I would say AI, and this came out from a Forbes article some years back, is that AI is like this broad umbrella term,
right,
right? Where you're talking about intelligence other than human brain.
right.
So it could be in computers, it could be anything else.
Hmm.
Like tomorrow, I can make this table do interesting stuff. That's artificial intelligence too,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
So that's like a big generic term.
Right.
And then within that, you can achieve AI
Right.
by machine learning, say,
Okay.
right? Or
Yeah.
statistical learning
Right.
and things like that. Or you could write an if-then else statements,
Right.
such long if-then else statements that you cover all scenarios possible.
Right.
If that was even possible,
Hmm.
then you have achieved AI through rules,
Right.
right? So that's probably how I think about it.
Hmm.
But then media has its own way of projecting AI,
Right.
right? So some years back there was this big word of big data,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
What exactly was big data? Nobody really knew,
Yeah.
right? But so AI is a very similar term as
Okay.
big data,
Yeah.
right? So, and then you have specific, and if you take big data out, then you have a whole bunch like got Hadoop, you got Cassandra, you got RDBMSs,
Right.
right? So, and then your Spark and all these kind of different tool sets which does slightly different processing
Right.
and has their own pros and cons.
Right.
Same thing with AI and ML. So machine learning again is the next step, I would say, where you have machines which learn from data,
Right.
right, or programs which learn from data. And then deep learning is a newer um, set of algorithms or concept. The algorithms are pretty old,
Okay.
and they have been developed in the 70s and 80s,
Okay.
and but they build a hierarchical representation of your data
Right.
through multiple different processing layers,
Right.
and that's deep learning.
Hmm.
So again, deep learning then becomes a smaller. So if you think about this as concentric circles, so you have AI as this big thing, then you have ML,
Right.
which is machine learning where you
Yeah.
learn from data, and then you have deep learning, which is which is a smaller circle within it.
Right.
So
Hmm. So next question is, what are your thoughts on training two networks at the same time if they're connected to each other? So um, I'm not sure what to make of this.
yeah, I
So,
mean, so there are multiple such architectures today.
right.
Like you may be alluding to generative adversarial networks like GANs.
Yeah.
There are two networks which kind of work against each other to come up with a representation of the bulk distribution of the data.
Right.
And then there is a design pattern in deep learning called the encoder decoder architecture. Like
Okay.
many of these the Google Translate like an NLP.
Mhm.
You have a network which takes uh, language in one domain,
Right.
translates it as
Right.
an encoder,
Mhm.
and then our decoder takes that representation from the encoder and then decodes into something else. So
Right.
that's how machine translation works in a
Yeah.
very nutshell.
Yeah.
Right. So um, so it's just not two networks. I've seen like multiple networks sometimes working together. And then the other thing that could even be that if you're talking about ensembles, for instance, if you have multiple networks and then you take the best of them.
Okay.
So that's another way.
Okay.
So
So there's multiple ways that you could use
yeah, so
two or more networks to do
yeah,
something that you're
the space of
trying.
architectures and the possibilities of different kind of ways in which networks can be combined is quite big.
Okay.
So
All right. So next question is, why why is AI the way the preferred tool for robotics and Google Assistant like softwares?
yeah, because so if you think about a robot or Google Assistant or Alexa or something like that, right?
Right.
So what happens is that they are working with real world. They interface with real world
Right.
almost seamlessly,
Right.
right? So if you have a real world, so then if you are doing if you are interfacing with real world or with nature or things like that very seamlessly,
Mm-hmm.
writing if then else crisp rules
Yeah.
becomes extremely hard
Right.
because like if somebody uses a voice assistant and uses a word in a slightly different way,
Right.
now to cover all these different scenarios using just rules and if then else statements is not going to work.
Right.
So that's why an algorithm which learns from training data
Mm-hmm.
and builds its own rules
Right.
is why they use deep learning and these algorithms in these kind of areas.
Yeah. That's that's a great answer. So I think we have exhausted our questions. I don't see that we had a lot of questions here on YouTube. So we'll ask Deepa if she found anything. Doesn't look like it. So I'm going to go with the last two questions, which are not AI and ML related, but rather more of a general question about studying abroad. Is it necessary to have bank balance to study abroad? You need to prove that almost every country requires that you to prove that you can pay for your studies, at least for the duration that you'll be there, or at least for the first year. Um, and there are multiple ways to get it. So if you get a scholarship, that's nice. You can show that this is my source of income and this is how I'm going to fund it. If not, you'll probably have to get a loan or show that your whoever is sponsoring you has enough money um, to support you for at least a year. So I hope that answers that question. Since how much does it cost to study MBBS abroad? So the medical degree, in at least in the U.S., is a longer thing than it's in India. So in India, MBBS is like 4 years plus maybe a year of residency. In US, you are expected to have an undergrad degree first, so you're supposed to have a bachelor's first. Then you go in there, and it's another 6 7 years at least. Uh, Tuition, I don't have the exact numbers, but they are somewhere around $40,000 to $50,000 a year. Um, you might be able to get a scholarship, but those are rare, so you'll probably take out loan. Um, and I can give you more detailed numbers later on. So that makes sense. If looks like there are no more questions, so I think we should wrap up. Thank you, Bhaskar, for taking time out of your busy schedule to do this. And I'm sure our students appreciate it. Unfortunately, we can't hear from them right now, but
Yeah.
we'll we'll send this out, all the answers that Bhaskar gave today, in text form as well. So thanks a lot for everyone for attending. See you next time. Bye.